All right, let's talk about this powerful, kind of invisible force that messes with everything, from whether you can find toilet paper at the store to the entire flow of global trade. It's called the bullwhip effect, and honestly, once you get it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. I mean, have you ever thought about it? You and a few other people suddenly decide to buy the same brand of chips. No big deal, right? But then, a few weeks later, the company that makes those chips is in total chaos. They either have way too much stock or nowhere near enough. How on earth does that happen? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to solve today.
So to really wrap our heads around this, let's just start with a name, the bullwhip effect. It's not just some catchy phrase, it's actually the perfect analogy for what's going on here.
Seriously, picture someone cracking a whip. It all starts with a tiny, small flick of the wrist. But that little bit of energy travels all the way down the whip, getting bigger, faster, and more powerful until crack. You get that huge motion at the very end. That amplification? That's exactly what happens inside a supply chain.
And here's the textbook definition. It's all about how these tiny little shifts in what customers are buying get magnified and distorted at every single step backward from the customer, from the local store to the distributor, all the way back to the factory.
Okay, theory is one thing, but let's make this real. Let's walk through a super simple story to see how this works in the real world. This is a perfect example of how totally reasonable decisions can lead to a huge mess.
So, picture a cozy little cafe. It's winter, business is good, and things are predictable. Every single day, they sell right around 100 cups of hot chocolate. Super easy to plan for, right? What could go wrong?
Well then, one Tuesday, an unexpected cold snap hits. It's freezing outside. So naturally, more people want to warm up, and that day the cafe sells 120 cups. That's a 20% jump, but remember, it's just for one day.
Now this is where the trouble starts. The cafe manager sees that 120 number and thinks, whoa, hot chocolate is taking off. This must be a new trend. I can't risk running out. So to play it safe, they order enough ingredients from their distributor for 150 cups a day. And just like that, they've amplified that tiny one-day spike.
So the distributor gets this bigger order. And what do they think? They're thinking, this cafe is ordering way more. Maybe demand is booming across the whole city. They don't want to be the one caught unprepared, so they turn around and place an even bigger order with the manufacturer, maybe for 200 units worth, or even more, just in case. See what's happening? That little ripple is already turning into a big wave.
So the big question is, why does this happen? How does a single cold day lead to such a massive distortion? This is where communication, or, the complete lack of it, becomes the real villain of the story.
The whole problem boils down to this huge, growing gap between what's actually happening in the real world and what each person in the chain thinks is happening. Every single person has an incomplete picture, and they're all just filling in the blanks with their own assumptions.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. The retailer sees a one-day cold snap and mistakes it for a long-term trend. The distributor, who only sees the retailer's bigger order, assumes demand is rising everywhere. And then you get to the manufacturer, who's the furthest away from the real customer. They just see a giant order coming in and think, oh my gosh, we need to ramp up production immediately. Each guess makes sense on its own, but when you string them all together, you get a version of reality that's completely distorted. But look, this isn't just some interesting thought experiment. This cascade of bad guesses has very real and very expensive consequences. Let's look at the actual damage this can cause. So what you ultimately end up with is a situation that looks like this. The real customer demand, of course, goes right back to normal, about 100 cups a day. But the manufacturer, acting on all that bad info, has just produced a mountain of hot chocolate mix that nobody wants. There's this massive, costly gap between the inventory they have and the actual demand.
And the fallout from that is just brutal. We're talking about companies stuck with warehouses full of stuff they can't sell. That means huge storage costs and tons of lost revenue. Production schedules are a mess, customer service tanks, and in the worst-case scenarios, this can actually lead to layoffs and bankruptcies. It's crazy to think it all started with just a few extra cups of hot chocolate.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's a huge, expensive mess. The big question then is, how do companies stop this from happening? How do you actually tame the whip? Well, thankfully, there are some pretty clear ways to fight back.
It really boils down to three main things. First, and this is the big one, communicate clearly. If the cafe could just share its sales data directly, or even just send a message saying, hey, we had a weirdly busy day because of the weather, the whole disaster is avoided. Second, forecast broadly. In other words, don't panic and overreact to every tiny local spike. Look at the bigger picture. And third, respond quickly. If your whole supply chain is more agile and can react faster, you don't have to make these huge, risky bets on future demand.
You know, this quote really just nails it. At its heart, the bullwhip effect is a communication problem. It's a simple error in judgment that just gets amplified and snowballs as it moves through a system where nobody can see the full picture.
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. This pattern, small ripples causing giant waves, it isn't just for supply chains. Think about it. What about viral social media trends or sudden stock market panics? Even rumors spreading through a small town. Now that you know the pattern, where else do you see the bullwhip effect at play? It's a really powerful lens for making sense of the world around us.